session is the third session in this series, and it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome two very respected colleagues, a sort of a member intermediary consulting organization in the social impact sector, Ritu and Ravi. Ritu Jain and Ravi Bagaria, who are the founders of Arya CFO Services. Both of them have a very strong background in finance, accountancy, and the governance and statutory compliances, and very familiar with the tax and taxation related norms and rules. More than anything else, both of them share a very strong alignment with Social Lens in the way we approach our methodologies, our missions, and what we've set out to do with the nonprofit organizations that we partner. So it has been a collaboration and a formalization of bringing our collective intent, mission, and complementing and complementary skills and knowledge and learnings and experiences through which we hope to bring more collectively together to all of you. So today's session will be led by Ritu and Ravi, and welcome to all of you. And Ritu and Ravi, I look forward to not just this session, but all the work that is going to come together for us on this very important new development, which is going to alter the way social financing will be looked at in India. On that note, I will hand it over to the both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I don't think we would have done justice to that if we were to introduce it. No, as mentioned by you, I mean, for us, this is a great platform to just give a brief, idea of when we are trying to get the social stock exchange and for an NGO to have that access. What would be the few things that we can be vigilant and very I would say put conscious effort in making this framework achievable once the government is giving us a go to approach the social stock exchange, and keeping very brief about lots of financial disclosures and aspects of it and how we can be ready for it. We will present our deck in such a manner where the flow is something that we would want to educate you all as to what are the things that the government is looking for whenever they issue the formal notification to access it.
Yeah. I see a lot of familiar names here. So hi to everybody. And it's always great to have a setting where, we get to be a part of the community and also be able to help deliver content, that is keeping everybody, there's so much constant development, right? Whether it's amendments, whether it's changes in law, or whether it's the new laws that are coming up, right? So social stock exchange, as we know, is obviously the most in thing right now that everybody has been talking about. And I'm sure everybody is waiting at the starting line that as soon as the whistle blows, everybody would want to get to the finish line, I'm imagining a scenario where there will be somebody who lists first and they'll be like, oh, this was the first organization that listed on the social stock exchange, But yeah, I think before we get to that, right, there is a long way to cover for every organization, especially keeping in mind the current compliance scenario, keeping in mind how, for lack of better words, scattered our disclosure requirements are, right? Like in India itself, we have 3 different forms of registrations. We have like the trust acts, which are state specific. We have the Societies Act, And then we have basically the section 8, right? And bringing everybody on the same page, being able to do fundraising in an organized manner is a very big task. And I'm sure that there is a lot of development for the social stock exchange, which is still going to come in, right? And so with that in mind, we're just going to sort of share like a quick PPT with you guys and take you guys through what we think currently, is the scenario on the social stock exchange, the disclosure requirements, and according to us, best practices that you can implement now to maybe, sort of try and get ahead of the whole queue.
So I think we managed to pull these disclosures which are required in the financial statements from the framework which was shared by SEBI in September 2022. What they're looking for every organization to disclose, we have the balance sheet and income statement, which are very, very common across all the statutory audits that are being done and the financial statements being prepared. They are expecting to have a cash statement, a program-wise fund utilization certificate. Now, this is something where I think most of the organizations are already doing it internally. But now the expectation would be that maybe whatever funds that you have been raising, through the social stock exchange, how are we using that? And please, they will expect to have a presentation over it of, basically tracking every penny that's been used. The same way they would want to have disclosure regarding what's your total percentage of the social security that you are using as an issue towards the organizational budget. This is something which has been mentioned in the framework. So we're expecting more details to come into what level do they want to bifurcate this. The next bit is the breakup of organizational budget and expenditure. The reason why I guess they would want this to happen is to how efficiently an organization is tracking the usage of the funds being raised through SSE. And this is possible only when we're able to have a good breakup of grants, donations, anonymous donations, however it's going to come in. The next bit, which is an indicator through the framework that they're expecting a lot of collaborative work. And if that is happening, then they would expect the split of the budget across partners of the project or initiatives. So anything that you all are doing it, like few organizations working together on a specific project, the expectation is that in your financial statements have the disclosure for it. Last but not the least, at least for the financial statements bit, they are definitely expecting an audit report and the details of the auditors. I think you want to add something to this.
Yeah. So I think in general, right, like let's look at it from a perspective where, imagine a scenario where you were going in for a listing or you have already listed. There is an immense amount of transparency and governance that is then required for you to be able to maintain that, right? And it's as good as saying that when you're investing in the stock market or you're looking at a private limited that is, making profits or a public limited that is listed on the stock exchange. How do you decide whether you want to give them money? You can't go and have conversations with the promoter. You can't go and have conversations with the management, right? As a retail investor. In the same way, when you're listing on the stock exchange, it's definitely going to be, sort of like a crowdfunding, but in a very organized fashion. You will not get a chance to talk to every person, no matter how much we believe that fundraising today is a very personal thing, especially when it comes to large and institutional fundraising. We will talk a little more about the modes and all of that a little later. But so yeah, we have to all gear up towards more transparency and more governance. Like everybody here today will have a very different opinion on how transparent they are, whether they are transparent enough, can they be more transparent? And a lot of these things will only get more and more crystal clear as we move ahead, right? But you have to bear in mind that if you want to do this, there is no getting away from compliance. There is no getting away from, giving out more information and, being as transparent as you can be. Yeah.
It's true. Expect is also on disclosure.
Yeah.
these are on the governance aspects. The whole idea is, other than the financial records, what are the other ways that the government is expecting every organization to display the information? The very first point is ownership and legal form. This is where we'll have to identify who are the board members, what is your form, the legal structure of it. Is it, is it covered under a Companies Act or a society or a trust? You do have a governance structure here. So every organization here is expected to disclose maybe their internal policies, the internal controls that they've been following, the board composition, also the details of governing bodies, the executives with the key responsibilities. They're very crystal clear in what is expected here is that they want people accountable and responsible. Just the way I think in the corporate world we have to disclose every key person involved. The same way we would have those kind of disclosures. This doesn't stop there. They would expect all the minutes, all the meetings that are being conducted with the main core members, the governing bodies, is something that is expected to be disclosed. There is a reporting requirement of all the related party transactions. This also becomes very crucial when it comes to income tax. So already all the organizations should be having such kind of information readily available. It's just another aspect that they would want to have it disclosed. Also, the mechanism for any kind of advice or concerns about ethics or any kind of conflict of interest. They are expecting anything that is other than the routine that has taken place in the organization. The expectation is to please disclose those kind of information. Remuneration policies is something that's really important, even irrespective of the SSE. I think their whole idea of the income tax and also the governance point of view is that on what basis are we, having remunerations, and especially for key responsible people. So documentation is something that we stress on right from the beginning, that we should have reasons for having an X amount being paid. Grievances, any kind of, any issues that the organization is facing, what were the steps, taken for it. Same thing with compliance management process. I think they would be very much interested in knowing how does an organization have a good control on, be it their processes, be it finance, be it overall governance of the organization. And definitely, yes, they would want to see your registration certificates and other license details, all possible compliance related ones. Like this includes like FCRA, TDS, GST, PAN, TAN, whatever I think we can think that legally an organization should be compliant with, that needs to be disclosed for sure.
Yeah. I think if we just very quickly take a step back, right? Like in more ways than one, and whether we like it or no, this is sort of moving towards a very corporate approach, for lack of better words again, of how information is to be shared and disclosed. When you look at listing requirements in the actual stock market, like the BSE, the NSE, and such, there are huge requirements from SEBI, right? Like you have teams working on it. You have to publish financials within 15 days of every quarter. You have to have meetings and minutes that are notified. You have to have a company secretary doing this. So all of this will require a lot of internal capacity building as well as external capacity building, right? A lot of this, when you look at it, especially related party transaction, remuneration policies, which should already be happening, right? But is overlooked by, let's say, your statutory auditor or any consultant that you're working with. So again, like we were saying, calls for a lot of capacity building, whether internally or externally, of people that you're working with. So be prepared for, making changes and making sure that, if you want to beat everybody to the punch and be able to raise funds like this, have a team, have a dedicated team, and, like a grievance received and resolved disclosure, right? So imagine if you raised funds through the stock exchange, and somebody who has sort of given you money through that comes up and says, you promised XYZ, but I can't see this in your impact report. How have you resolved that grievance, right? So that means having somebody who can man that that particular operation and making sure that is resolved. So a lot of this is going to not just be a one-time effort, but a continuous effort.
Which is where I think we plotted few points that we think are important from a financial management perspective.
Correct. So, all of this brings us to like, yes, these are the disclosure requirements, but what do we essentially do to gear up for it? And what are the best practices for financial management? Now, again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is things that we can think of. You can already start doing, create a checklist and say, do I have this? Do I not have this? How do I, start getting prepared for it? Because a lot of this is not going to be an overnight change, right? It will require systemic change within the organization. You need to have a very solid budgeting and monitoring process, whether it's unit economics, whether it's understanding variable and fixed costs, separating program and other functions within the organization and saying, what are the budgets for that? A lot of us work with a very singular approach to budgeting, saying this is my organization budget, this is how I'm going to spend it. A lot of us do the budgeting, but there is no monitoring mechanism. So you have to start gearing up and making sure that you get in line with all of these things, because without this, you will not have a reporting mechanism back, right? One of the requirements Ritu told us about was, tracking fund utilization on a program level. So that's one thing you need to also start doing, whether it's on a grant level, project level, location level. You need to also then start maintaining accounts in that manner. A lot of the organizations spend effort in doing this so that they can have better management. But I believe if you're aiming eventually to raise funds, you will have to get into that mode. One thing, that is sort of really important to understand is that this is not, when you want to list, right? It is not just in the last year, how have you done this? It's about the last 3 financial years. So a lot of your effort might also be in trying to go back and restate, how have you sort of done this in the past? You need, again, very important is, today the sector is slowly moving towards technology. But there is still a lot of averseness to being able to adopt technology without having automation and without having something that can help you manage scale. It'll be very difficult and challenging to do this on a regular basis, whether it's the reporting requirements or whatever else. So prepare and start getting automation and scalable systems in place, whether it's monitoring your spend, whether it's monitoring your payroll or whatever else it is, programs, impact evaluation.
Yeah. I think I just want to add, when it comes to automation, just from our experience, we've noticed that the moment an organization is heading towards automation, it's a very indirect or a direct way of having our systems and processes well intact. Because for something to work on a system or on a software, you will have to have very well-defined rules, regulations, controls, a matrix. So it enables an organization to be funder ready, be sure that you have everything in place when it comes to tracking, when it comes to knowing or being aware of how are things going on. So it is something that everyone should definitely give it a try and see the challenges that are being faced and work on it in a phase-wise manner.
Yeah. So one of the requirements when you're listed on the stock exchange is that within 45 days, you need to give a audited statement of utilization of the funds every quarter, right? Then for your staffing, from a staffing perspective, you need to have experienced and capable staff who can handle all of this, right? Even your consultants for that matter. From an automation perspective, a few examples we can share is start using cost centers in Tally. Look at systems like ERP for Impact, Zoho Creation, or whatever else that is available specifically for NGOs, right? Don't look at customizing. Look at adopting something that exists, even if it doesn't meet 100% of your requirement. If it gets you 85% there, use it. The rest 15% you can continue to figure out, right? Another very important piece is that make sure your objects and incorporation documents are aligned with what you are really executing. A lot of times, organizations that have been formed, a decade or 2 decades back, continue to work in their, in a very natural way, the vision and mission will evolve. But what happens is that some of the times you overlook what you can actually do and that is permitted by your trust deed. or your MOA, and versus what you're actually doing. If there is a gap, make sure you fill that by redrafting and getting all the permissions for it. You were saying?
At times it's something that's been pretty old, right, to begin with, and now things have been evolved, and there are different things that you would want to do as founders or as members. So just make sure that it's all in a line, like with your MOA or trust deed.
Yeah. The last important thing here is policies, right? A lot of us, and when I say policies, I mean on every aspect, whether it's finance, HR, administration, POSH, program SOPs. This will help you scale. Make sure that they are, they are commensurate to the size of your organization and are very valid for what you're doing. A lot of times we tend to sort of pass the buck around and say, hey, can we just take it from somebody? Can we use a template that is available? Yes, you can, but you need to also go through it, fine tune it, comb it, and make sure that it's specifically applicable for your organization. Now, when it comes to staffing for finance, this is another very crucial and important element, right? A lot of us always see finance as a cost center, and rightly so, because we feel that it is not helping us get revenue, it's not helping us deliver program. But now with the stock exchange coming in, think of it like an investment, right? Because this is going to be the backbone for you to be able to scale and move forward and function. Whether it's internal or external, make sure that your staff is qualified, understand what you're doing, not just the program, but also the compliance aspect. Right? And they are in line with what you want to achieve and will go the extra mile to be able to deliver what you really need. Make sure that you can spend and keep aside for capacity building, for opinions, for being able to say that you are 100% compliant, and all of these things that will keep happening. Start getting into the mindset of this is a crucial element to survive, and not just this is an ancillary and a residuary element. We all know statutory compliances that are applicable. I will very briefly point out, right? When it comes to labor law, it's better to comply and have peace of mind versus trying to, say, oh, how will we make sure that, we can have people on contracts, make sure that, we don't cross 20. If you have to scale, there is no going out. There is no getting away from it. If you really, really feel that you don't, labor laws or some of the PF, etc. aspects are not applicable to you, apply to the department for a specific exemption, it will be so much better, because nobody can really then come back and point fingers at you. And the last thing is presentation of financials, right? Like what Ritu just told us about all the disclosure requirements. And again, I feel that these are still very, very nascent.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they will come up with formats and, how you should disclose it, specifically what is required. But I think what we all can do as, from a starting point is look outside, look at countries outside of India where they have so many more, evolved requirements when it comes to stating what is really need to be given out. Like that's one place I strongly believe that we can start from.
Yeah. Anyhow, we're short of time, but this was just a brief on what are the disclosures and how can we do certain things right now in the immediate presence of certain ways of building our capacity towards the social stock exchange.